Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Barnes.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Orr.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Woodall.
Here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ceremonial matters. We are going to now swear in a newest officer. Augustine, yeah. Please raise your hand. I state your name.
I, Augustine Sierra,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and
the
defend
Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear faith, true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and
to the
allegiance
Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the adopted ordinances and resolutions of the City of Rio Dell,
and the adopted ordinances and resolutions of the City of Rio Dell,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Let's turn around so everyone can see this. I am Maria. Nice to meet you. Now we have more police department stuff. Great, great night for the police department of Rio Dell. Yay. So we have Jeff Connor, John Shane, Crystal Landry, Ryan Hill, Whitney Tim, and Luke Bernthal.
Where do you want to stand?
Proclamation of the City of Rio Dell acknowledging and thanking Jeffrey Connor, John Bouchane, Crystal Landry, Ryan Hill, Whitney Tim, and Luke Bernthal. Like I'm missing a person. For the investigation and prosecution of 2 separate cases of sexual abuse of a minor. Whereas in May 2021, the Rio Dell Police Department received information on 2 unrelated cases of sexual abuse with a minor. Both cases involved multiple victims. The Rio Dell Police Department conducted numerous interviews, collected evidence, and quickly arrested suspects in each of the cases. And whereas these investigations continued over the next year, in which former Chief of Police Jeffrey Connor, Sergeant John Bouchane, Corporal Crystal Landry, and Humboldt County District Attorney's investigator, Ryan Hill, acted with exemplary professionalism, extreme urgency, and great skill to identify additional victims, conduct numerous interviews, and collect additional evidence. And whereas your relentless pursuit of truth, meticulous attention to detail, and collaboration have been remarkable. Your ability to remain composed under pressure and to collaborate effectively with each other has undoubtedly contributed to the successful resolution of these investigations. And whereas Deputy District Attorney Whitney Tim and Luke Bernthal undertook the people's cases with calm resoluteness, care for the victims, and showed great skill for bringing both of these cases to successful resolution. And whereas your professionalism and dedication to serving and protecting the community are a shining example to your peers and an inspiration to us all. Your efforts have not only brought a sense of justice to the affected parties, but have also reaffirmed our confidence in the law enforcement system. And whereas the pursuit of justice in this case involved witnesses stepping forward, the assistance of allied agencies, and a jury of members of the community, all under the leadership and guidance of those important individuals, Jeffrey Connor, John Bouchane, Crystal Landry, Ryan Hill, Whitney Tim, and Luke Bernthal. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this 5th day of September 2023 by the City Council of the City of Rio Dell that we do hereby express our heartfelt thanks and pride on behalf of the residents and businesses of Rio Dell for the work of Sergeant Jeffrey Connor, Sergeant John Bouchane, Corporal Crystal Landry, Deputy District Attorneys Whitney Tim and Luke Bernthal, and District Attorney Investigator Ryan Hill in the successful pursuit of justice. Thank you. Thank you.
Sandy got a job, so she wanted to be here.
Thank you. Public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not allowed under the Brown Act. Items requiring council action is not listed on this agenda and be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council rests. Unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an emergency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Any hands raised? Emails? Then we will close public presentations. And move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone, any council member who'd like to remove anything from the consent calendar?
Number 4.
Number 4. Anyone, staff or person left in the audience? People asking. Then is there a motion to approve items 1 through 3? So much. We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion in a second. Motion carries 5-0. Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, the item is on this approval a letter to be sent regarding ACA 13. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I'm not in disagreement with what is recommended by staff, but it's a very confusing, to me anyway, it seemed like it was very confusing initiative, or I guess you will call it ACA, it's an actual amendment. Well, ACA 13 is an amendment to the California Constitution, but it stair steps through, if the city manager will probably have to help me, it stair steps through another initiative that is on the ballot, this old, whatever it is, old 21, something, old 42. The legal effect on the one that we passed for our initiative, actually, whichever was for sales tax, is that if the one is passed in November of 2024, then that will be invalidated. Is that correct?
The most recent tax was, I believe, November of 22. Or
We passed it in November 22. The 21 says anything after January 22.
yeah, so our latest sales tax measure, the 0.75%, with my understanding is unless there's judicial intervention would be rescinded.
No, with the passage of ACA 13, that would be true. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. So ACA 13, the ACA stands for Assembly Constitutional Amendment. What it seeks to do is make some changes to where a simple majority cannot pass that there cannot be a requirement on a future proposition that is only passed by a majority of voters in a specific election that then requires a 2/3 vote threshold. It would instead require that if you're going to require a 2/3 vote threshold, that proposition obtain a 2/3 vote threshold from the voters. So one of the issues I think with this proposed future legislation or proposition is that certain elections are well attended, certainly presidential elections, that sort of thing. But there are other elections where there's significantly less voter turnout. And so you can have propositions or measures where, significantly smaller portion of the population of voters makes the requirement for the 2/3, So again, as always, and this is language from the League of California Cities. The League always advocates for local control. It's one of the central premises of why cities have organized together in this Cal Cities organized effort, is that over the years, over the decades, we've seen local control, local authority stripped from city councils, from board of supervisors over the affairs of their jurisdictions. And primarily, I think this one is focused primarily on the fiscal aspect of that. But that's one of the concerns. And so the League consistently advocates for issues that help preserve local control, and they consistently push back against measures that erode or eliminate local control over specific issues.
And that is part of why I got out of it. The other, like I said, is a very confusing thing. If I understood it correctly, in order for ACA 13 to go into effect, the 23rd is the committee passed it to move it on to the state legislature. They have to pass it by 2/3, which then will put it on the ballot so the voters can pass it by 2/3. And so this, what I'm trying to say is we probably need to have more clarification, but also that the voters would be wind of this, that we need to have this support in order to have a local jurisdiction. And I think the part about this other initiative would avoid this too. So I mean, it's, you know, I can be certainly wrong on that. But it's definitely confusing, and we need to have local support, at least have knowledge that our community supports this. We have to get it passed to have the support within our local. But our local jurisdiction, not having a state legislature telling us what we can or can't do in our city. So that's just my comment. You know, again, I think it's support that we have.
Are there any other questions? Anyone in the, any got questions? Any hands raised? Moving now. Make a motion?
I would make a motion that we accept staff recommendation and approve the letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 5-0. Staff communication sitting on page 21 in our packets.
Thank you, Mayor Dorns, members of the council. The staff has attended a meeting with the water board staff to discuss some of our brownfields in Rio Dell. Most notably, there's one remaining brownfield on Wildwood Avenue corridor that we know about, which is 255 Wildwood, the old BP gas station. So we've been looking. This has been a project and an issue that has periodically sort of been brought up, and we're looking at some different avenues to see what role the city can play in terms of getting that specific site remediated and turned into a more productive use. Certainly staff is hoping that we would have something to bring back to the council in the near future in terms of options that the city might employ in regards to that. Also, last week's North Coast Journal, certainly want to encourage the council, members of the public to go ahead and read that. It had an article regarding a recovery from the December and New Year's earthquakes. Certainly not a happy read, but I think overall an accurate, honest depiction of kind of the situation overall that the community is in. And certainly the victims of the earthquake. And want to encourage folks to read that. With that being said, the rest of the staff report is contained here. We certainly have staff available to answer any questions, and then we probably want to let the chief free to go meet with the rest of the crew outside. But with that, I'll go ahead and return to the mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, well, Ms. Barker, thank you. Anyone have a question for the police chief?
I do not. No.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just, thank you.
Thank you.
I did read the North Coast Journal article, and yeah, it is long, they all are, but it's a little depressing, but I just want to thank you, Kyle, for being such a good spokesperson for the city and for this issue in particular. You were quoted very well, and it as a representative of us, you know, getting quoted in the paper, I'm happy it's you. So thank you for that. But no other questions beyond that. Anything I had answered already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Orr?
No questions.
Okay, Councilmember Woodall?
I'm just amazed at looking at the staff reports. People
Yeah.
are very busy. And I appreciate all the work you do because, I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with it. You guys have done. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson?
I'm good.
All right.
And reiterate, out on the walls, but the staff does an excellent job.
Absolutely. And are there any hand raised, any questions? Well, thank you, staff, and we are lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have our police force. Yay for that. And we will move now to special presentation. SB 1383 related to short-lived climate pollution and organic waste, page 28 in our packets. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor Barnes, members of the council. I think it was Councilmember Wilson who had requested that we have a presentation on this important subject. Certainly, Councilmember Wilson has been very involved in that. HWMA has been an interesting topic for several years now, and all of the various roles and responsibilities it has and doesn't have, and certainly the changing regulatory framework associated with that. So Rose is going to pull up the PowerPoint for Mr. Eric Keller Heckman's presentation. Eric is the executive director for HWMA. He's been that for just 3 months or so, something like that. And certainly, I think is a great testament to the staff at HWMA, and knows quite a bit about this particular subject, far more than I do. So, so I think get that PowerPoint going and introduce Eric. Thank you.
Eric, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me as well. Did you have? Say next slide.
You just have to read it.
So, like City Manager said, my name is Eric Keller Heckman. I'm the Executive Director for Humboldt Waste Management Authority. I have been in that role for 3 months, but I have worked for the authority for over 15 years in a myriad of different capacities. So tonight I want to touch on a brief presentation, but I also want to get to a point where you guys can ask me questions, because I feel like that's where a lot of the fruitful discussion has, and you can ask specific questions about the city of Rio Dell that pertains just to your jurisdiction. So we're going to talk about 1383 and obviously where we're at in the path to compliance. So an overview, we're going to talk about the California legislative building blocks that brought us to where we are today, local organics diversion services and efforts so far that we've done in the past and are currently in process, and where we are on the path to compliance. So the first legislative building block is AB 939. This is the grandfather of waste management bills. It is the Integrated Waste Management Act, and it was a guide to local agencies for the implementation of source reduction, recycling, composting, any manner of diversion activities. These set the first thresholds for 25% diversion from landfills in 1995 and 50% diversion landfills in 2020. The next is AB 341, mandatory commercial recycling. This was intended to help meet a new threshold of 75% diversion in 2020. This required businesses and units with 5 or more residential units attached to provide for recycling services. AB 1826 is mandatory organics recycling. As part of California's recycling and green waste emissions goals, businesses in multifamily units that generate a specified amount of organic waste were required to be provided services for that waste. This set a new goal to achieve 50% reduction of statewide disposal of organic waste by 2020 and a 75% reduction by 2025. Additionally, not less than 20% of current disposed edible food must be recovered for human consumption by 2025 as well. It's important to note that SB 1383 is not just an organics processing bill. While that's a main factor in jurisdictions compliance, it contains so many more activities. Jurisdictions are required to develop programs to meet those diversion requirements set by the state. Specifically, jurisdictions establish ordinances for your collection, which Rio Dell has already done. They must enforce on businesses that do not comply. The program essence of this is ordinances, adoptions, establishing administrative tracking, reporting system, establishing source separated collection routes, education, also procurement of organic material for your jurisdiction, and ensuring that compliance enforcement mechanisms are in place for your businesses. It is important to understand the links between 341, 1826, and getting into compliance with 1383. 341 and 1826 were meant to be a stepping stone or building blocks to 1383. They were meant to provide the jurisdictions with ensuring infrastructure was in place, pickup collection routes, processing materials, things of that nature. So the thought from CalRecycle is you comply with 341, you start building a building block. You comply with 1826, you add another block to that, to the step that we're going for diversion. 1383 builds on both of those legislative mandates. Unfortunately, in California, there's still a lack of these services and a lack of infrastructure. So resulting in a lack of compliance across the board. A lack of compliance with 341 and 1826 does nothing but broaden the gap for the lack of compliance with 1383. Next, we're going to take a brief look at local organics diversion efforts and services today. In 2003, HWMA entered into a partnership to develop Mad River Arctics. Most of you will know that as West Green Landscaping in Arcata. HWMA invested heavily in the environmental review, the permitting, the infrastructure, and committed our green waste tonnage to that facility in this private-public partnership. Unfortunately, as you know, Steve Morris is no longer operating there, but or West Green is no longer operating there, but Steve Morris Logging did purchase them, and they are currently processing HWMA and member agency green waste through a contract that ends in 2027. In 2011, 5 years prior to the passage of 1383, HWMA partnered with the City of Eureka and Humboldt State to develop a food waste collection and diversion pilot program. HWMA received $200,000 in grant funding and provided matching funds to staff and resources to examine costs associated with food waste diversion in a variety of commercial settings in the City of Eureka. This entailed considerable planning, training, and working with over 50 restaurants in the greater Eureka area. Alongside the 18th-month pilot project, HWMA undertook efforts to develop an anaerobic digestion facility. Working with the City of Eureka and member staff from all of our member agencies, HWMA conducted a site study for property located on Hillficker Lane across from the Eureka wastewater treatment plant. The RFP for an anaerobic digester was circulated and 6 responsive proposals were ranked in 2013. With the decision by the City of Eureka to decline establishment of a food collection service and no other member agencies supporting the establishment of service, HWMA was unable to continue the process of developing an anaerobic digestion facility locally. At the time, related infrastructure costs were estimated to be $4 to $8 million. That does not include operating costs. That does not include purchase of the land, permits, fees, things of that nature. Additionally, HWMA commissioned a waste characterization study in 2020 to assist in providing data for general composition of member agencies' waste. The organic tonnage information was expected to quantify whether there was a measurable reduction in the exact same waste characterization study we did in 2011. Additionally, we were hoping to see that the tonnage would justify in-county processing for organics materials, so we could tell exactly how much material was still in our waste stream being sent to landfills. HWMA also undertook efforts to purchase Mad River hardwoods on South G Street in Arcata. Negotiations were initiated in 2016, but staff was directed by our board to withdraw in December of 2016. HWMA also looked and evaluated potential sites at the Cummings Road landfill. So next, we'll take a look at the rough timeline for organics processing. While this obviously is a timeline, it's good to keep in mind that a lot of these steps have been worked on and finalized concurrently. But this is just a little bit easier to see. So obviously the first step is amend and approve the JPA. That was approved and finalized in July of 2023 by each one of our member agencies. That restated and amended JPA gave HWMA flow control of organic waste. So that was the first big step in ensuring that we get on the path to compliance. Additionally is facility modifications. So those are ongoing. Two of the major facility modifications we need are floors to handle the organic material, and we need new roll-up doors at the site that was the recycling center site. We have to make sure that the doors work, and we need a floor that's easily able to accept organic material and process it. Step 3 is actually on the jurisdictions, and I believe every HWMA member agency has done that. It's complete ordinances, amend new ordinances or amend previous ordinances to ensure that you can collect that organic material. The fourth is RFP processing and services. So we just went through a lengthy process. We released an RFP. The Executive Advisory Committee has made a recommendation to me, and I will be bringing that forward at the September 4th HWMA board meeting. I anticipate our HWMA board awarding that RFP based on that recommendation on the 14th of September. Additionally, negotiate and approve franchise collection and amendments. This is a very big one. It is going to probably impact, outside of the RFP process, probably impact the jurisdictions the most. This is where you're going to find out how much it's going to cost to either implement a new route or add onto your routes that you already have additional capacity or tonnage to pick up this material from your businesses and eventually your residents. Number 6, step 6 is the organic waste recovery facility. So once the board awards in September, the RFP, HWMA staff will begin negotiating a contract for the short-term transportation and process of organic material. We expect that to be done by January of 2024. And that will be going out of county for 3 to 5 years. So it is a short-term solution while HWMA and member agencies can find a way to build in-county processing infrastructure and capacity. Number 7 is a big one also, rate development. So rate development, with the anticipated organic volume and processing cost, HWMA will develop organic material fees for consideration by our board, by the jurisdictions. The jurisdictions will also coordinate with their respective haulers for collection rates. And finally, members will establish and approve the collection and processing rates for curbside collected and self-haul drop-off organic waste materials at the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station. Once implemented, ongoing monitoring and maintenance is going to be crucial to ensure that we cut down on material that should not be in there. Education and outreach is going to be a massive thing that HWMA will need to take on. Your franchise haulers will need to take on, and each jurisdiction themselves. You guys know your jurisdictions better than anyone. You know how to get to your residents, how to talk to them, how to convince them that some of these programs that may seem like not ideal, in the long run, they're beneficial for everyone involved. So for a frame of reference, the approved 1383 regulations are over 130 pages long. And so that is just this singular bill. And like I spoke to earlier, it's not just an organics processing bill. There is a myriad of requirements, some of them on jurisdictions, some of them on haulers. It is the biggest waste bill in the last 30 years since 939 was passed in 1989. I would encourage all jurisdiction staff to start, if they have not already, quickly start developing a working knowledge of the regulations, how it's going to pertain to your jurisdiction, your haulers, your collection services. HWMA and my staff are always available to answer questions. As we touched on earlier, we've been living this since 2011. So I was there during the pilot project as well. So I have been doing this for a very long time. I would also encourage the council to visit the link above that says elected official guidance tools, so we can provide that as well. And it gives you kind of a rubric condensed version of this and hits you really with the high points that you should either be asking questions about, or you might have concerns about your jurisdiction. That gets you kind of started down the road to understanding a little bit more about 1383. And then I would obviously be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Eric. Lots.
Yeah.
Councilmember Wilson's on NWA and Al, do you have any questions?
I don't have a lot of questions. I do have questions, but they're still working through some of those in the timeline. Particularly in the implementation that, what do you call it? Recall is going to have to work out. I believe they're going to be different spots. But universal collection, I think, is part of what has been discussed. And it may seem simple again from what Mr. Keller has mentioned, but it's not. The state, we had a thing in the last meeting from they call the Little Uber Institute, which is a think tank kind of thing that exists in California that tells you, they give their opinions, and they did give a very favorable opinion on what California has done on 1383. They should have gotten to probably 2 years. So, and it points out some big shortfalls, mainly California's ability to really implement this. They haven't. California has come and you're going to do this, so we're going to have substantial fines for you, and we're going to enforce it. And yet they really don't give you the guidance to make this thing. How you get that waste, your potato fields and the mashed potatoes you need tonight, and separated from your other garbage that goes to the landfill is a big step. Yeah, that has to get separated and then transported out of the county, where you said 3 to 5 years to be turned into compost, and eventually try to compost it within Humboldt County. So the more that we can get involved in this, I think we need to do it. And I know city manager has worked a lot with the advisory committee and with HWMA to, I think we're usually about the first one to get our stuff done as far as getting it back to so we're moving along, but it's still a long ways to go, and it's not going to go away. It's just going to get more complicated. Yeah, so I appreciate you coming down and doing this.
No, absolutely. And the city of Rio Dell and your staff have been incredibly responsive throughout most of this process. One thing to note, City of Rio Dell does have waivers for certain parts of 1383. So you have been given a couple extra years when compared to large jurisdictions. But that's only for some of the mandates. That's not for all. So you will still be required to comply with some of the mandates in 1383. They've just given you a reprieve on building the total collection and being able to have that really roll out.
I have a question. My question was, how are we gonna do this? That's answering. That's just what's bouncing around in my brain.
I'd be more than happy to answer that if you like.
Like, how are we gonna do this?
Perfect. So as of right now, we're going to award the RFP on September 14th. There's two options really. We got two proposers that kind of go two different ways, but the gist is commercials, commercial entities, restaurants, large businesses, things of that nature, they will be picked up, and that is what we call source separated material. So the only thing that we're going to be picking up right there is food waste. So generally, commercial businesses don't have green waste. They don't have a lot of tree clippings, anything like that that is a commercial entity, almost always sell calls, either to the authority, to Blue Lake, or not Blue Lake, McKinleyville, or Eel River. So we are going to pick up raw food waste, basically source separated food waste from commercial entities. Residents are a little bit more difficult. What's gonna eventually happen is you put your food waste in with your green waste. When we collect that, it comes to the transfer station and we will process it. Now, there's two ways depending on the direction of the RFP. One way is staff will manually hand sort food waste out, just like we did in the 2011 pilot project. Or we will mix all of it together and we'll run it through a grinder and we'll process it that way. Or we'll send it to a processor that grinds it. So that's really the two basic ways. The residential side is much more complicated because we have a lack of infrastructure. The source separated items are much easier to deal with because they're source separated, they're by themselves. Deciding what we want to do with residential food waste and green waste, that's more difficult. But I believe as all the jurisdictions and HWMA, we've come to realize that a better solution for our county is a simpler solution right now, which is combining both residential food waste and green waste mixed together, and we'll process it that way. Instead of creating a new route, instead of having an alternate process, that's kind of how we're going to deal with that now.
Yes, thank you. Because what we have a 50% subscriber rate.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Because you're talking about universal garbage service, which I'm a fan of, and I'm a fan of this too. It's just, how are we gonna do it? I can say that when I talk to members of the public about this, they don't have a clue what I'm talking about. They think I'm kook. Nobody knows what this is. I've been looking at, or, kind of following how other cities out of Humboldt County are dealing with this. And it's a lot of public education. I've seen cities that hand out the little organic, container that goes on your kitchen counter or whatever to try and help people, and just holding public forum after forum after forum for people. I mean, I don't know if this is something we should consider at some point.
So I think
soon.
I think the big roadblock was because Humboldt County doesn't have any in-county infrastructure. None of the jurisdictions nor HWMA knew exactly the direction you wanted to go. So generally, we knew it was going to come to HWMA. The permitting process for accepting food waste is going to fit inside our solid waste facility permit. So that became the quickest and easiest way. We also do nothing but handle all of member agency waste, so we're pretty good at it at this point now. But normally you don't solve an equation from the middle out. You want to go from the front or the back. And that's what we're trying to do. And we needed to decide either how jurisdictions wanted to collect it or how jurisdictions wanted it processed. September 14th, we will know exactly how jurisdictions want it processed. And then we can start rolling out education. We can work with franchise haulers to better understand routes to ensure this outreach reaches the people that it needs to.
Yeah. And that's it for my questions. I want to thank you for being here. I know this is a big deal, and Councilmember Wilson's been keeping us informed for years now. We've always known it was a big deal, but it's nice to put a face to a name and have you here to answer. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you again. Tell me about it.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Little. Yes, going through all of this, I've noticed that every page it says organics. Now, this may be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay, so this, and I'm just going to put a very basic one. I'm standing in my kitchen sink. Virgil, did you buy an organic head of lettuce? No, so it's going to go over here. So are we actually separating out organics from the other food, like our restaurants probably are?
No. So we're not talking, when the bill or any waste industry talks about organics, we're not talking about an organic certification.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not going to bore you with the definition of organics because it's about 2.5 paragraphs in and of itself in the 1383 regs. But the gist of it is anything that would go in your green waste, and generally anything that you would put down your garbage disposal outside of bones, meats, fats, stuff like that. So bones, meats, and fats are still going to remain trash, but your fruit, your vegetables, your lettuce, all that type of stuff, leftover food, pasta, anything that has food waste in it, some types of food soil paper, some food cardboard, depending. all of that is what is considered organics. So it's not organic certified, it's organics as a name of a type of waste stream.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I just didn't. So it'll really be time intensive if you're separating this by hand, right?
That is correct.
And do you feel like you can do an adequate job of it? Well, you myself, you wouldn't be saying that you're gonna go to that.
We did it in 2011. It's not the best way to go as far as if I could write a blank checkbook and give me 10 years back to restart. It's not the best way, but I believe, and the jurisdiction believe that right now is the best way forward for our county and compliance for the jurisdictions. Yeah.
I know some of the other things we try to recycle aren't getting recycled like they should be. I mean, it's not us, but everywhere. So could that happen with this?
Absolutely. So the current residual rate for the curbside collected recycling material, HWMA also manages that contract on behalf of the member agencies. Last year it was right around 27% residual. I think, funny enough, organics is actually easier. So the industry standard 5 to 7 years ago was 9%, 8%. Our jurisdictions are 27. So we're not doing a very good job of keeping material out of the recycling stream, but it's a little bit more difficult. You can have what's called goodwill recycling with recycling. So you take a peanut butter jar. If it has peanut butter in it and you haven't washed it out, it's got a little bit, and it goes on the sort line and it goes right across a large thing of office paper, and it gets crushed. Not only was the peanut butter jar, peanut butter in it contaminant, but now that one single contaminant has contaminated all of that paper. That's not a scenario really that happens in the food waste industry. There's generally food waste, and then there's a little bit of plastic, some plastic bags, forks, knives. Those are kind of the main thing, but it's much easier for someone to say, is this organic or is this not? Like, is this green waste or food waste? Than it is this film plastic recyclable in my jurisdiction that I just moved to? Because it can change through jurisdiction, through state, it's much more difficult. So it can be an issue, but I don't believe we will have the same type of issues with the organic stream as we do right now with the recycling.
Yeah, it would be working. You answered my question perfectly. Do you ever do tours?
Of course, absolutely.
Just call and.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't think you all can attend.
No.
That'd be a Brown Act violation, but I'll work with city manager and we'd be more than happy to facilitate something like that.
Okay.
Well, like I can bring my friends.
You can bring them up.
Right?
You can bring them up.
You can bring them.
So I've done the tours for the last decade, give or take. I've done classrooms of 40, so
Yes,
we'd be more than happy to have whoever you'd like to come take a look at it.
I just being able to see it.
People need to, the people need to see it.
I think it's much easier to see what our staff does, and it also is a little bit easier to see maybe what should or shouldn't go places when you get to see who has to handle it and who has to pull that out.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Councilmember Orr?
I just had a quick one. When we're talking organic waste, are we talking now the source consumables, the disposable utensils, cups, all the land source stuff? Because you said some food cardboards and everything, or is that still?
So it is dependent on the processing facility, so it'll be dependent on the successful RFP proposer, but generally those facilities are going away from allowing compostable utensils, compostable things like that, because they make it impossible to identify non-compostable utensils. And so one of the biggest issues with utensils is if they're plastic, they go into the organic stream and they don't go away. They either get chopped up or they get turned into microplastics, and they're still in your nutrients. And then if you go to have your nutrients or your amendment certified, that's going to come up in those tests. So a lot of those places have gone away from compostable knives, forks. They say you can use them at home, you can compost at home because you know what you're composting, but it makes it incredibly difficult to decipher between compostable forks and not. So we are moving away from that good nature attempt in the industry. Yeah.
So another education. Thank you.
Yeah, and education and outreach, if there was, outside of the lack of infrastructure and the costs that your residents and all residents are going to see, which are not going to be small in the grand scheme, education and outreach is probably the most important thing I can leave you with tonight. Our county as a whole is very difficult to educate and outreach, whether that's through our rural nature, whether that's through each individual likes their own news source or go somewhere for their own news source, whether that be print, digital. It is incredibly difficult to advertise at all, much less incredibly complex things. So yeah, that is going to be very, very important.
As a teacher, I can tell you, get the kids on board, a good parent.
That is true.
So, so it's gonna be like 3 to 5 years before the county has an anaerobic digester, or are we going to?
So we have not determined what we're gonna do for long-term processing. We wanted to help the jurisdictions come into compliance as soon as possible. That meant going out of county for processing for 3 to 5 years. That 3 to 5 years hopefully will give someone interested enough time to build infrastructure in county. It has not been determined exactly what process we're going to go with, although it will be unlikely once we build the infrastructure and the process and the education outreach necessary for this first 3 to 5 years that we would drastically change that. So we want to streamline it and keep that the same. But no, we have not determined exactly what we're going to do in county.
And is there any hope or wild dream that the state at some point will provide funds or grants for enforcement or for any of the requirements, the unfunded requirements that small towns, big towns, I mean, it's going to be tough for every single jurisdiction in the state to follow every single step along this process. Is there any, up in the clouds, anything the state is going to do or?
So as Councilmember Wilson mentioned in the Little Hoover Commission's report, that was a big item that they had. Is I believe in 2016 when the bill was passed, infrastructure costs were looking at, they predicted 46 million across the state. We are now well over $50 billion that we think we're going to have to spend in the state to become compliant across the board. They felt that was a huge issue. Lately, Power Cycle has been focusing on grants for processing or physical items. So a lot of them are shovel-ready projects. HWMA actually just applied for a grant for the floors and doors infrastructure for our facility. So a lot of them have been focused on that. Power Cycle believes that they gave jurisdictions adequate ability to charge businesses and residents to try to build this program. So I don't know if in the future they will be coming with grants for any of that. I just know that right now infrastructure is what's lacking, and infrastructure is kind of where the state is pushing all of their grant funding for it.
Are there any questions? Derek?
Yeah, I was just as a consumer of curbside pickup here in Rio Dell, since we're actively trying to reduce weight, you mentioned tonnage, and I assume that most your rates and everything are based off of tons hauled out of the city, stuff like that. Since we're going to be ultimately aiming to reduce the actual volume of organic waste from our solid waste, will that be incorporated into kind of that universal curbside pickup? Kind of, will it reduce our solid waste fees by then eliminating it from the organics from that particular set? And then secondly, you mentioned my concern about the whole thing on this whole situation is, again, the education of the public and taking care of the sewer system. fast moving greases are torture on a collection system. You mentioned what goes down at garbage disposal, and an easy way to not have to deal with all this is to put it down the sink. And that's going to create additional burdens for other industries such as sewer collection and treatment. I understand you mentioned the anaerobic digestion, which I kind of assume that's where this was heading in the beginning, due to the Fortuna and Eureka's anaerobic digesters, which would be, turn it into methane cogeneration. So I guess my question, first one was, is reduction of solid waste in our actual curbside pickup going to kind of help subsidize, or is it just going to be an overhead cost? And then secondly, what do we do with fast moving greases as far as organic waste requirements?
So I'll touch on that one first. Fast moving greases should be just trash. So they should have always been trashed. You're 100% right. They shouldn't be going anywhere else. It should be going down your garbage disposal. They should be going as trash. They will not be part of the organic stream. So they will stay as solid waste until either new technology or we have new processes in place. Because they are, like you said, they are a terror on pretty much everything that they touch, unfortunately. They're very difficult to handle. The first question is a little tougher for me to touch on because I'm not involved with the franchise process for Rio Dell, so I don't know exactly what those type of costs look like. Additionally, the amount of cost and infrastructure that's going to be required because of the short timeline, for quite a while, it's probably just going to be an additional cost. Yeah, eventually there may be a scale tip that we've gotten so good and our process is so great and our in-county infrastructure is now paid off for itself, depending on who owns that, whether it's private, public, things like that. You may see a reduction. That's the goal. That's where we're driving to, is incentivize. Because the biggest thing is, there's always going to be people that want to do the right thing or think they should do what everybody says they should do in the process. Incentivizing people works incredibly well as well. So if you save money on trash, because trash is more expensive, if you save it pulling it out and putting in organics, that's kind of what we're going for. That's what we do for the most part with recycling. That's what we're trying to do with this organics. But because of the complete lack of infrastructure in county, you're probably not going to see that for a while, unfortunately.
And then follow up. And you mentioned this several times, just confirm on the 14th of this month, there will be a decision made as to whether it's composting or how the county is going to move forward with the process.
So I will be bringing the executive advisory committee's recommendation for short-term transportation and process on the 14th. I have every inclination that our board will award that, but I cannot guarantee that. But that is most likely when that will happen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone over on this side? Rich, got anything over on that side? Any questions? No? Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of already touched on it. I goes on the resident of Rio Dell, anyway, so just acting as resident and a right there. So you kind of already touched on it, but Rio Dell's kind of a core community, so going to universal collection, so this would be an added cost on top, at least at first, you suggested it, if I understand correctly. Is there any suggestion at all of possible additional help for low income that you at least have heard of?
So I cannot speak to your jurisdiction on if it's going to be an increase, a net neutral or anything. I can say for HWMA right now, at our tipping fees and our fees that we're going to be passing on, it's going to be additive. It's not going to be a tipping scale. Whether Rio Dell is a jurisdiction, how that impacts them, that's not something that I can speak to directly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any hand raised? No. Eric, thank you. You answered so many questions and we appreciate your as clear as it can be anyway.
Well, absolutely. Anytime you'd like me to come back, anyone that you'd like me to speak to, anybody who would like to come and visit HWMA, I'd be more than happy to facilitate that.
And we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
You guys have a good night.
You too. Now we're on to the presentation from the tobacco retail licensing. Page 41 in our packets. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Thank you.
City manager, did you have anything before?
Thank you, Mayor Dorrance, members of the council. Elaine Hogan and Caitlin Gillings are from the Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services to provide a presentation on tobacco retail licensing options for the city in this matter. The item is, we did have a meeting with a local advocacy group on this matter, and so the item is coming with the sponsorship of the mayor. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it back to our presenters. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we're getting our presentation up here. So I'm Elaine Hogan, and this is my colleague Caitlin Giddings. We work for DHHS Public Health in our Healthy Communities Division. And we're here today to talk about tobacco retail licensing. You may, perfect timing. You may know that the County Board of Supervisors recently adopted a tobacco retail licensing ordinance. And so we're here tonight to foster regional collaboration and let you all know kind of more about the city's or the county's ordinance and some options for your city regarding policies like this that have been proven to protect public health. And throughout the ordinance development process, we took about a year and we reached out to city managers in all of the incorporated jurisdictions to kind of let them know how the ordinance development process was going. And then once the ordinance was adopted, letting them know that it was finalized. So we're kind of here tonight to continue that effort of regional collaboration and give you all a chance to ask questions and to consider ordinances like this for your city that might be a good fit. So tonight, we are going to just review a little bit more about the county's ordinance, different parts of it, and
we all have.
oh, you good, you've got it. Right, great. So we'll go ahead and review a little bit more about the county's ordinance, show you some local data that supports policy efforts like this that protect public health, and then talk a little bit more about some supports that are offered to you through our Department of Public Health, as well as our partners that Kyle mentioned, should you choose to move forward in exploring a policy option like this for your city. So yes, second slide, great job. And now we're just on the second slide. That was everything for slide one. So just some basics about what is a TRL ordinance. It's really a self-funded policy option for local governments to reduce the availability of tobacco for youth and give you all the ability at the local level to enforce local, state, and federal tobacco laws in the interest of protecting the public's health. And so the tobacco retail licensing ordinance can have a lot of different options, and we'll go through, like I said, more about what the county chose to do in their ordinance. But it really is like the tool that gives you the local control over what's happening in your jurisdiction regarding tobacco retail. And I'll pass it on to Caitlin to talk a little bit more about, oh no, this is still my slide. Go back. Go back one. Here we go. Oh no, forward one. You're doing great. There we go. So a little bit about why we're talking about a TRL ordinance. Like I mentioned, the county passed a TRL ordinance in May. It became enacted in July. And why this is a public health concern, tobacco is still the #1 cause of preventable death in California. So this is, as a public health branch of DHHS, something that we are still very concerned about at the local level. And it's a policy option that you can see over 200 cities and counties throughout the state have enacted similar ordinances, and because again, it is considered public health best practice. And another issue is that there is no local enforcement structure without a TRL ordinance that allows for local control over tobacco sales. And now I'll pass it over to Caitlin to talk a little bit more about some local data. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to gather some data for you guys just to see what's happening in Humboldt specifically and Rio Dell as well. So the first statistic, as you can see, 34% of the deaths in Humboldt County can actually be traced back to being either caused by tobacco smoking or contributed to. So seeing that over a quarter of the deaths in Humboldt are, related to tobacco smoking, that is a pretty serious thing that we should all kind of take a look at. The second two statistics are actually from a survey that happens statewide in all the schools. Students are asked a variety of questions, like about all kinds of things about their lives, including about tobacco use. So in the first statistic, the 17%, the last time the survey was done, which was the 21-22 school year, 17% of the Rio Dell seventh graders actually reported that they had ever used a vape product already. So for me, when I think 17%, I'm like, okay, that's kind of close to 20%. So that's like 1 in 5 of the seventh graders, which is just like shocking to me. They're so little. And if 17% of the seventh graders are using it, what are we looking at for younger grades? The third statistic, the 48%, so that one is talking about 8th graders who were reporting that it is fairly or very easy to obtain vaping products. So you're looking at half of your 8th graders think it's pretty easy to obtain vape products, cigarettes, whatever it might be. So since we know that youth use is a problem locally, and we can see that they're probably accessing it from the retail environment as well, we're going to actually talk about that retail environment on the next slide. So it is illegal to sell a tobacco product to anybody under the age of 21. That went up in 2019, so right before the pandemic. And in 2022, some of our community partners went into stores with youth decoys, and they had them try to attempt to purchase tobacco products successfully. So as you can see, like, for example, in unincorporated areas, over 60% of the stores were surveyed, and that actually resulted in a 54% sales rate. So that means that a youth was able to purchase a tobacco product in a little over half of those stores successfully. You can see similar rates for Ferndale and Arcata, and even in Fortuna, where it's 27%, that's still a little over a quarter of the stores that a youth was able to go in and successfully purchase a tobacco product. So the county's actually chosen to address this issue by passing a TRL, or Tobacco Retail Licensing Ordinance. They've been shown to reduce youth access to tobacco products and then also the youth use rates. So I want to go ahead and look at some of the provisions in a minute, and then just keep in mind that if Rio Dell did decide to adopt the county's ordinance in full, it would allow the city the option to contract with Public Health's Division of Environmental Health to assist with the permitting, licensing, and enforcement of that ordinance. Okay, so we've got 2 slides of the ordinance. So these are the main provisions. Basically, a tobacco retailer would want to get a license every year, be valid for that 1 year. No flavored tobacco products will be sold because that's what's most youth friendly and what like 97% of the youth are using. If you're a pharmacy or like a mobile vendor or a licensed cannabis business, you wouldn't be able to have a tobacco license in addition to those. And then if you see the picture on there, you can see that there's a Zyn ad and then I think, American Spirit ad, really close proximity to candy and snacks. The ordinance that the county adopted actually prohibits tobacco products from being advertised or sold within 5 feet of those things that are really youth friendly. So another part, or some more of the provisions of the ordinance are actually that you would prohibit tobacco coupons, discounts, or samples. So those are all things that, again, make it pretty accessible for youth. Cigarette stores or tobacco retailers are giving out discounts or samples. It makes it that much more accessible. There would be no new licenses issued if the business is located within 500 feet of a place like a library or a school. Again, those are youth serving facilities. And then you wouldn't have new licenses issued within 500 feet of an existing tobacco retailer. That's to kind of keep it lower density in the town, ideally just lessening that exposure to our youth. And then the last part, the main provision of our ordinance is that it has limited transferability, so you can still transfer it, but it's just to like a parent, child, spouse, or domestic partner. So again, just keeping in mind, if Rio Dell did decide to adopt the county's ordinance in full, it would allow the city the option to contract with Public Health's Division of Environmental Health to assist with that licensing, permitting, and enforcement part. And then I'll pass it back to Elaine so she can talk more about the services from the Division of Environmental Health. Thank you. So as Caitlin mentioned, if Rio Dell were to pursue an ordinance and end up adopting one that was the same as the county's ordinance, that would allow our Public Health's Division of Environmental Health to contract with your city to handle things like the licensing, the permitting inspections, the enforcement, and any appeals that you get from retailers. And so this is a similar model for other county services, maybe planning and building, when the smaller jurisdictions don't have their own planning and building departments, you're able to contract with the county. And so a very similar process through an MOU where you would be able to work that out with our Division of Environmental Health. And so that is one of the supports that's available if you were to choose to move forward with an ordinance like the counties. And then Caitlin can talk a little bit more about some other supports that are available from our partners. Yeah, so in addition to kind of what we talked about today, and then the contact information for the director, the Division of Environmental Health that's on the screen, we've got some great community partners, 2 of which are in the audience. So they're around for, education, technical assistance, it's all free, they're funded like we are. Any questions you have about best practices, why is this a good idea for Rio Dell? So we have contact information for everybody there in case you want to reach out to them for more assistance. The next slide. And then to end, we just want to say that considering a tobacco retail licensing ordinance for your local community is a huge step towards bettering the health of your community and lowering that youth access. So we appreciate your time, and we could definitely take any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you both for your presentation. Councilman Orr?
Just quickly, I would say just a quick question. It says the 500-foot regulation, no new licenses will be issued. Does that mean that they won't renew licenses that are existing if they fall within that as well? So if somebody that's 500 feet from another store goes to renew it, they're gonna be like, no. I'm not speaking against it, I'm all
Sure.
for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to, it's a good question, and happy to talk more about how that works in the county's policy. So the county has decided for a phased out approach, also previously known as grandfathered in approach, where existing tobacco retailers will be given the chance to come into compliance and to get licenses. Now, there could be a situation if they were to let that license lapse for a few years or whatever, and then they go to apply, it would be considered a new license and then would therefore not be permitted. But existing businesses, yes, would be permitted under the county's ordinance to get a license.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodall. Let me be on that.
When we say, licensing, so local establishments, I'm trying to wrap my brain around the smoke side. I think there's only four places that I can think of in Rio Dell that possibly sell tobacco products. I know the grocery store, CNC Market, get away with the baby flavored stuff. They have a sign there. You can't buy it because I think that got outlawed. But are they required to have licensing now in order to sell tobacco product?
Yeah, so the only licensing right now is through CDTFA, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. So that's at the state level. It's maybe $200 a year. $265 a year. And so that is right now the only license that's specific to tobacco. And their main focus is really making sure that it's not counterfeit products, that they're officially stamped and that they're legitimate tobacco products. And that's for sales tax purposes, making sure that those are authentic products.
So how does this? So you go, I don't know, you charge only $200 or $500 per night to do this retail license in Rio Dell. How does that prevent? I mean, they're already, it's against law to sell by law to sell to minors. How does this license cut down on minors getting tobacco?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, like we mentioned, the only license is through the state. And like Caitlin also briefly touched on, you may remember that the state of California voters enacted a flavors ban in the last election cycle. The issue right now is that there is no enforcement of that. And so local jurisdictions have taken it on themselves to collect the fees and be able to have that communication with their retailers and that education to know what products are being sold in their communities, and to help retailers come into compliance at the local level.
I can't. Yep. Tell me how we keep, the 8th graders or whoever's, I don't know what age, there's some of it looks like there's 21 or not, but I mean, that's a whole other thing. But how do you stop, whether you have a license or not have a license, how does that stop the minor from purchasing them? I mean, are there fines associated to the ordinance thing that are substantial enough, more than what the state's doing?
Yes. So part of what the funding helps provide are, Caitlin mentioned, like some of the data came from youth decoy purchase surveys. Yeah. Where we can send youth in and see, do they get carded? Are they being asked for ID? Kind of what's happening locally. And she gave that data very well, that we do know youth are accessing these products in the retail environment. And so part of the licensing fee goes to help enforcement at the local level.
So you have an option to go do like they do like with alcohol.
Sure, the shoulder tap method, right.
And then fines are, when we say substantial fine, what kind of fines are we talking?
So the fee and fine structure from the county hasn't been passed by the Board of Supervisors quite yet. So we're still looking at all those numbers, and that should be coming to the board later in September, I believe. But yeah, there are fees associated with the license and then fines, and it's a progressive enforcement policy that's outlined really well in the ordinance, where there are violations. The retailer has similar to how the food permitting inspections for restaurants work, right? They see a violation, the retailer's notified about it, given steps to take to remedy it, and then if they aren't coming into compliance, then there's just a progressive path that's taken with further fines, and they could lose their license, it sort of escalates from there.
Thank you.
I think they asked all my questions already. Just thank you, ladies, for being here. This is important, and you gave a lovely presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
So in the enforcement, you said that you can give them fines and everything. But are you good at that? Do you follow through with that? I mean, how far do you, well, you probably don't know this yet, how far do you have to go before you pull their license? Because if we don't have something that makes it really hard for those people not to sell the things, it's not, it's not gonna work. They'll still be doing it, and I don't know. I think they need to be more effort needs to be put on the people that are actually doing it to make them, that are selling, because it's already illegal to do. So
Correct.
that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, and so ordinances like this give us, again, the local ability to do enforcement. And so as I pointed out in the one slide, our Division of Environmental Health, this is what they do, right? They're enforcing everything from septic tanks to public pools to tattoo parlors, hazardous waste facilities, right? They have a lot of experience with this very similar sort of a setup with permitting, inspections, fines, and the way our ordinance is written is actually very strong in legal terms, in terms of, the county felt like this was a very strong and enforceable ordinance. And that's why we chose to do it, because there were a lot of questions during the ordinance development process, like, well, how are we going to enforce this? It's always a concern. We can pass all the policy we want, but how are we actually going to enforce it? And so we are confident that we have the right legal backing and sufficient staff through our Division of Environmental Health to enforce this.
So do you do the liquor to the, they send in somebody to see if they can get them sell it to an underage person?
We do not.
Okay.
No.
But my question about that was, I mean, if you could go along with this, is that Compared to the number of times that happens, that's it's a rare thing to have people come in and do that. I mean, I've watched it in grocery stores a lot, you know. Safeways maybe had 3 times and somebody's come in. I mean, do you have enough people will you have enough people to enforce it with the tobacco?
Yes, at this point, we are confident that we do. And really what we see statewide is that once retailers receive education and they come into compliance, there are very little violations after the first couple of year implementation process. So the other 200 and some odd jurisdictions that have done this throughout the state have really seen success. And you don't really deal with retailers that are just non-compliant or just sort of blatantly disregarding public policy. And so we do have sufficient educational supports and enforcement resources.
Can you tell me offhand another jurisdiction that is about our size that have implemented this?
At the small city level? Well, certainly not in the county, because we have county unincorporated. We were the first ones to pass it, and now we're going around to the smaller jurisdictions. There is a huge list, though. I could get back to you with that information. Yeah, because there's certainly
somebody else that has done.
Absolutely, yeah, that's always very helpful. And there certainly are a variety of sizes of cities and jurisdictions that have done this. So I'd be happy to get that back to your city manager.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Already, or already any of the cities in Humboldt County signed on it?
Not yet, but some of our partners have been out doing presentations similar to this. And we are certainly going to be reaching out to other jurisdictions that are interested. They've all said that they're kind of in support, but wanted to wait to see what the county did. And so our county ordinance for unincorporated just got enacted in July. So we're sort of at the beginning of this regional collaboration process.
So, will there be with permanent teachers, will there be a fee associated, like an MOU with the city to help enforce the new ordinances? Is there a fee to the city do you charge a fee? Would you charge a fee? Would DHS charge a fee to the respective city to help enforce, or would it just be a memorandum of understanding such that you will come out so many times a month or so many times a year, check the different establishments and report back, or how will that work as far as the?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's really something that our Director of Environmental Health would be the best person to help answer. I do know that it'll be an MOU process, and it'll be similar to other environmental services that you all contract with the county for. So the MOU template will provide kind of a menu of options, and this TRL enforcement and permitting would be an option that you could select, but I'm not sure about the details of the.
And basically, you are asking jurisdictions to more or less follow the counties. You're not saying write up a whole other thing. You're saying here, if the county's done this, it's been vetted, it's been approved. If you follow this, that should remedy a majority of your problems and issues in the city.
Yeah, so policies like this, like I said, are public health best practice and have been shown to reduce youth rates of tobacco products. And, you know, we're a small county, we're isolated and rural, and so we really would like regional coordination on these policies, and really would like all the jurisdictions to have a uniform policy. It just also helps the consumers, helps the retailers to not feel like there's an unfair advantage, helps the consumers understand why none of these products are available anywhere. It's not that you can still go to that one spot in one little city, that kind of thing. And so really looking at the public health of our county as a whole, and trying to get support from all the jurisdictions.
And it isn't a county. It's a county mandate, it's a county ordinance, but the cities.
Correct, you're your own, right, no, yeah, you are your own jurisdiction, yes, your own entity. We're just sharing what the county did, and again, we would, like like cities to hop on board, but again, that's up to your jurisdiction, to see if it's a good fit for you. And I, invite you all to, we didn't put a copy of the ordinance in your packets, but it is on our website. If you search for tobacco retail licensing Humboldt, our public health page has a link to the county code, and has it, I think, as a PDF, so you can just see the ordinance and really get into the details of it. And like we said, we're happy to answer any questions. Our Director of Environmental Health is happy to answer any questions more about the MOU and licensing and permitting process. And then, like Caitlin mentioned, and that's on your slide deck, we do have some local nonprofits and partners that are happy to help with more questions as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any hands raised? Any emails? Anyone? You already. Rich, got anything? Any questions? Got any questions?
No.
Okay. Then I just want to thank you both, and thank you as well for being here. It's really an important issue, and it was a Redwood Rise that came and we had a meeting with, and and they were very informative too. There was, I think, we got more real Dell information, specifically. So thank you so much for being here, and
And Mayor Garnes, if I may, might be an appropriate time for the council, if there is any direction to staff, we can continue to engage the county in terms of looking at their ordinance, vetting it with our council, monitoring the county's fee implementation, or certainly if the council's uncomfortable proceeding at this point in time, we can certainly bring it back at a later date. But this is kind of an opportunity also for the council to potentially take action on the item.
Thank you, City Manager. I was gonna see if there was consensus. I know we're at the very least looking at the ordinance from the county and considering what we can do here in Rodell. I don't know if we have a consensus on that.
Just looking at it.
Yes. But anything still, just kind of reviewing and having what the city manager said as far as looking at it, staying in touch with what's happening at the county, looking at fees, that kind of thing, and then bringing it back to the council at some point.
And I think it would help, Karen, if that were put into a motion with the first and the second.
Okay, more than a consensus, okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to move forward with reviewing and continuing the TRL ordinance in the process?
So this is just too hot.
This is just what Kyle said, is looking at it.
We're looking at it, yeah, actually.
Yes,
Absolutely not.
I will second that
We have
motion.
a motion and a second, so please vote. Motion carries 5-0.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Travel safely back.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to authorize city manager to finalize and issue a request for proposal for the Gateway outdoor exercise equipment.
Thank you.
Page 47 in our packet, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So the council last discussed our overall gateway enhancement project here in California and gave direction regarding the landscaping portion of that project. However, this item is exclusive to the outdoor exercise equipment item. And so working with Councilmember Barnes, Mayor Garnes, and Mayor Pro Tem Berger, we have some recommendations for the council to proceed on this particular project. Attached to your packet are some images and descriptions of 4 pieces of equipment for the site. The hand cycler, squat press, pull-up bars, and ab crunch for the outdoor exercise station area. So for example, if you look to page 49 on the bottom of that page is an example of the hand cycler, and actually what one of the stations would very much look like. which is there's a central pole that has a maximum capacity of holding 2 stations at the same time. Because we have to have no less than 3 of these stations, there's an option for a 4th, which would be the squat press, the more expensive item on that particular list. So the total cost for this specific equipment is a little under $21,000. Staff has made application for 2 separate grants to help augment the funding for the Gateway project. One, which is a small PG&E grant that I do feel is likely to be awarded to the city for the project. And then the other is a application through the Coast Central Credit Union, which we'll find out towards the end of October whether that application is successful. But again, we can scale down the project by the more expensive piece of equipment if that becomes necessary as we get our goods back in. The other component to the project obviously is going to have to be your access to the site, and then your fall area, which right now it's currently being designed, the final design. So I don't have a biddable bid sheet for the specific construction on that, but we are anticipating that any day. So we can issue that RFP and get the work, get the process rolling on that particular project. But you'll see, and the image is a little bit difficult to see, but on page 51, the image that you're looking at, to your right would be Davis Street. Across the street would be the Dollar General. And then that's on the corner of Wildwood Avenue. So there would be some new sidewalk that would have to be constructed, ADA accessible, and then the fall area would have to be contained with a border, and then engineered mulch would be used for the ADA fall services. So that's the final piece of the project. I wanted to just bring it to the council just to see if we can expedite the process and kind of move forward with the RFP portion of the project, and see if there's any questions or comments, or if the council would like us to revise or return at a later date with any other additional information.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor Lieutenant.
I don't have questions. I think it's a great idea. I would like to move this along. I think for the health of our community and for the fun. This stuff's fun. I think we're gonna see people playing on that stuff all the time.
I'm just moving a little. Yeah. Do you mind if I have a few questions on it? I mean, it's not just, okay, is it bad? Will we have some signage?
Yeah, so part of the advantage of this particular setup is that there's signage attached to the structure itself. So you'll get instructions, a user would get instructions on how to use the equipment, what the benefits are of the equipment, and then also obviously the safety disclaimers and all that kind of stuff.
You said that, so who is going to install? You said we would just purchase the equipment. Who's going to install it?
Yeah, so we'll have to get either a separate contractor or potentially have staff do the installation. But this would be part of the overall bid package to do, but it's mostly cement work and some excavation to create the appropriate depths for the fall area.
How long is the equipment warranted? Or do they warrant the equipment?
I don't have that information.
Okay. Will there be hours? What concerned me once I got thinking about it, and that was, this just came out in my mind, that both of those areas down there right by bedroom windows would have been wonderful had we thought of it before, and it's too late now. I realize I put it in the triangle park at the far end, where you could set it back, because then it's just a business behind it. But like I said, that's too late. I think that's it, and if we had to pull anything under DD.
This was the squad.
Yeah, the squad thing.
And that's a good question, I think, on the owl thing.
Yeah,
Because of that, so that would be something we, I think, should address at some point. Councilor Orr?
Like others have expressed, I'd really like to get this moving, so I'm all for it. I have no question.
Councilor Wilson?
Yeah, my only question, like, I know you described it like, the stuff that's small, like, can that work, is it just down here by the park with the signs on it?
Yeah, so it's directly across the street, trying to move it as close to the Davis Street sidewalk as possible, so it isn't directly in front of the neighbor's house there, but is a little bit more inboard of the Davis Street.
But it's basically go out here in front of it. But no, I think it's a great idea, I don't know how you can enforce the hours and that's cheap, but as long as people aren't rowdy or anything, they're gonna complain. It's good.
Are there any hands raised, any email? Any questions? Yeah, okay. Nice. Awesome. Nice.
I want to thank the city for recognizing who you recognized tonight
Oh,
at the beginning.
okay, thank you. All right, Rich.
You know, the officers, I guess, and all that, because I think they really need to be recognized,
Yes.
you know.
All right, thanks, Rich.
That's a biggie.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Carry on.
All right, okay. Then is there a motion to, authorize the city manager to finalize and issue the RFP for the exercise station?
I will happily make that motion.
With all four of the,
At the start.
okay, okay.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 5-0. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. I attended both a beautification, walkability and pride committee meeting and a nuisance advisory committee meeting. I don't have too much to report out now. Eventually I will, but not now. I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. They're planning Christmas already. Y'all get ready for Christmas time. So yeah, we are in the works for that. So I will keep you all updated on tree lightings and fire truck parades and Santa Claus. And it seems way too early to be talking about that, but we gotta talk about it. Went to a REDAC meeting where I don't really have anything to report out here from that either. Upcoming, we are rescheduling our nuisance advisory committee meeting for this one, but the date is as yet to be determined. So we're gonna figure that out. We are going to do a river cleanup day on September 30th. I believe that's 9 to 11. Keep your ears open or your eyes on Facebook or the electronic sign, you know, for all the masses that are here. If you would like some more information on that. And let's see, we have a beautification, walkability and pride committee meeting on September 15th. That's Friday at 9 a.m. That's right here. We will be discussing more about the river cleanup day, and John will be here from the fire department. He's the one who organizes it. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Sacramento to the Cal Cities annual conference and shout Rio Dell story to anyone who will listen to me. And that's my report. Thank you.
Councilmember Orr?
Went to an HCOG meeting, the big things there were, went over the financials and everything for last year. Ridership was down a little bit. They're hoping that changes now that the COVID restrictions are lifted. The other big thing was the housing project that they're working on. They're rehabilitating old hotels, and multi-unit facilities, putting kitchenettes in there and, providing them to homeless and, on a priority basis. So it looked like a really good project. The videos they have available online, are really good. They look really promising.
Councilmember Wilson?
All I have is that it appears that, with Mr. Keller, after they said they're gonna bring this thing up by HWMA, the 14th, for that's that Thursday, they'll do for the RFP to find out what route they're gonna go. We're gonna have a 15 period. Yeah, that's all I have.
Is that still a hybrid meeting, Frank? Can we watch that?
Yeah, that's hybrid.
Okay,
That's what
okay.
hybrid. So is, RPA
Okay.
is hybrid. You can call like you want.
Yeah, but I can watch the meeting if I want to.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about the RCA one. I think you had to go, you had to get the Zoom number on that.
Okay.
And, you have to look on the agenda, HWMA, and see where they, 'cause I don't think it's a YouTube. I think it's, Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Well, technically, you're city council.
Oh, yeah.
That's who that's the chambers you're using, so they've got it set up with, yes, I think it might be on Humboldt Access,
I've watched them there before.
they're in the building, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodall?
They're taking over my HTA meetings for the next 2 months. Be sure to get my donuts.
Okay.
That's the good thing about having that.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, would it be possible, I don't know, I'll just ask, can we get new flags? Get a US, an American flag that's bigger than the California flag, and we need the California flag under it too. They're getting whipped in the wind.
You mean for the city?
Yeah. And a larger one than what we have now as far as the American flag. I mean, do you guys agree?
Don't disagree.
Used to be able to get the US flag from our local representative's office, they fly over the Capitol. They used to do it, they got a squad that runs them up, and they go 30 seconds, run back down, and the flag is flown over the Capitol.
That'd be a good idea.
I don't know how, I think it was pretty, they charged it. I one out of 10 was that big block they wanted to do.
Yeah, we want one of No, that's all I got.
Okay. And I'm doing the equity council stuff, which is a new board that I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is, so I can't go too far too deep into that, but it's under the Redwood Region Rise program. And I will also be going to the Cal Cities convention in 2 weeks, which will be the first time in a long time that 2 people, like 6 people go from Fortuna and 5 people from Eureka. So it'll be nice to have, to be able to go to different meetings and cover more ground, that'll be nice. And I think, Julie already said I'm doing the HTA tomorrow morning. We've already reported that out. So I think that's all I can think of in the moment. And I didn't know about the donuts, but I was very excited once I found out.
You get to go.
They give you a donut at the end.
Oh, but they make you wait till the end.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah. No, they just recently started putting them on the other table. They used to be on me.
Okay. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we will adjourn until September 19th at 6 o'clock. I really enjoyed the 6 o'clock time. All right.